All right, there we go. So thank you all for coming. Welcome to April Diversity Chat. It's almost been a year. Um, but yeah, so today's topic, of course, is how can you be accessible if you're invisible? And we will definitely get into that since it's a small group. If you have a question or input, just butt in. Trust me. I'm winging it, so why don't we all just wing it together? So just go. Um, and if you're uncomfortable asking the question, you can send it to Julie, who is my moderator. You can send it to her in the chat, or you can just post it in the chat and she'll ding ding me to say, hey, we have a question or a comment. So again, how can you be accessible if you're invisible? And I chose this topic because when you start looking at diversity, there are all these different levels to diversity. And one of the pillars that I kind of look at when it comes to diversity is access. So a lot of people don't know about your particular theater company, or they do know about it, but they don't know how to get into that particular theater company. And a lot of people go, oh, well, they can just send us an email or they can just come audition. And those are all really good and easy when you're in the biz. But when you're not in the biz and you're sitting in the audience, that little notice on your program that says, oh, come join us, really doesn't mean anything. Because truly, when people are looking at a program, they get down to whoever it is they're wanting to see, and that's the last thing they see. So all that nice little other minutia stuff that you put in the back of your programs is completely filler. Um, we're all human. We get our information, and then anything below that is just extra. So I wanted to have this conversation so that we could kind of discuss what does being visible and accessible mean in this new, I guess I'm going to call it this new era of theater. Um, because, now we have the competition of online and in person, healthy or not healthy, or, you know, can I cast globally? Can we cast diversely? And all of that really fits into it. And I don't want people to miss the opportunity to be visible, especially in this mindset. And another way of looking at accessibility and visibility kind of feeds into marketing a lot, but I'm going to say just a little bit because you can market wonderful things. But again, if people don't have the ability to really get involved, it poses a problem. So I'm going to pose this first question. For most theater companies, where do you get most of your, whether it's on the board or whether it's people in the seats or whether it's people on stage? Where do those people mainly come from? Throw anything out there. Where did they normally come from?
So this is Kevin Harnish. I'm with Providence Players. I'd say it depends on where you are in your journey as a theater group. I think at the beginning, I know our experience was it was a group of interested parents who put together. It actually came out of a PTA performance, and that was 22 years ago. And then it's evolved to what we have today, which is a very dynamic theater group. In Falls Church. So I think I'd say, depending on the journey, maybe it's colleagues, friends, neighbors, fellow local actors. And then after that, quite frankly, I think it gets harder and harder and harder to bring people in.
And it does. And a lot of it has to I think for that, because I have worked with several theater companies that were, when I was with them, they were in year 30 and 40, and they were like, where do we get the people from? I'm going, it's almost like you have to hunt for them, like back at the beginning of the pandemic when we were all trying to find toilet tissue and Lysol. It's the same search. Um, and remember how frustrated we were when we couldn't find the toilet paper or paper towels or the Lysol. And it became this thing where you started reaching out to other people. Do you know anyone that has any? Do you know anyone that has any? So the same, as weird as this sound, the same type of detective work that we went through to get the necessities that we needed at the beginning of the pandemic when everyone was hoarding everything. And I can probably attest that I have probably all the toilet tissue in my basement. But that same type of detective work that you did to find those items, that's the same type of detective work that theater companies need to do to find the talent, the audience, and the people to kind of assist. And does that sound like a lot of work? Yes, it does. And it is. But if it's something that you really want or need, like Lysol or toilet tissue, you'll do it. And I think for some, they get to, because it's our volunteer work or whatever it is that we're doing, and we all do it. I know I do it. We get to that point where it's like, well, I can't do it alone, or it's too much, or it's too this. They have to come from somewhere. And sometimes you just kind of have to dig your heels in. So treat your, and this is going to sound really bad, so I have to find another way to say it. Yeah, just search for your talent and your boards and your audiences the same way you searched for necessities that you needed at the beginning of the pandemic. That's the best way for me to say it, other than the other way it was going in my head. What are some other ways that you find um, your talent, or how have you come about it in your different groups? I see Elizabeth poised to speak.
I turned the video on, didn't I?
Yeah.
Well, with Free Range Humans, we started, and the whole idea of start like you want to continue, which comes from a baby book. I don't know if anyone read it, but is the idea that that you start how you want to be perceived going forward. And so our first show, it was 90% white females who auditioned, and then 9% white males, and really almost no one else. So I ended up bringing in somebody from New York, and it didn't have any impact on my next set of auditions. So it's like it was a lesson in how much I have to do the work locally or regionally, and it was a statement for the audience and nobody else. I'm going through this right now. We've put out an audition call, and it's still 90% white female. And but we have, sky's the limit on our casting. So I am encouraged. When I started Free Range Humans, part of the point was to be more of a local human and try to develop my resources in the region where I live. And I'm very excited about a board member who has agreed verbally to join our board. We are still doing board documents, but she's a real connector in the community. And so I've been harassing about 15 African-American artists in Frederick for about 2 years to come do things with me, and being completely blown off. But she knows all of them, and she's cool, and she's a connector, and I hope they'll show up. It's like, I gotta go around, because they're not, there's like a trust factor that's, I'm new, I get it. Reputation's not here, so yeah.
And you kind of hit on something there. I mean, the trust factor is definitely something that a lot of theaters are going to have to kind of recognize and look at. And it's not a slight or anything, but people are very territorial. If they don't know you, they tend to shy away from you. And it's almost like you have to be referred. And I love it when people are like, Well, Ricky, I know you're busy and you can't do it. Do you know anyone? Here are 5 people. I can attest that they are available, but here are 5 people that you can try. And then I quickly texted all those 5 people and I'm like, okay, I know you might not be available, but I need you to have at least 2 or 3 more ready to pass on. So it's,
Please feel free to spread that word. Please.
I have you on my list to sign up. My brain keeps forgetting. It's literally on
And you
my
too, Danny.
list. Audition.
You both have history here, you know?
I know. But yeah, those are things that, and a lot of it with being accessible and visible is kind of like what Elizabeth just brought up. It's the connections, it's the things. I mean, shockingly enough, you will assume that a lot of people know each other, and it's one of the most, and it's not an intentional thing, but it's one of the most ridiculous things that I get asked a lot by one particular person. Anytime they are looking for people of color, I get called. And it's always Ricola. I'm trying to find people of color. You know where they all are. Yes, they are in my backyard. I am growing them. So it's like, sorry, I didn't mean to make you choke, Janny. But that comes up a lot for me. And I don't know how for this particular person, I became the caretaker of all people that are Black. But I finally had to tell her I don't grow them anymore. So I don't know how to send any more to you. But it is connections. Like I didn't know Danny until I forgot what show it was. It might've been Beehive. Was it? When did I meet you? I don't know.
Rocky Horror.
Oh, that was before Beehive.
Quay
Okay.
was choreographer, so.
That's right. That's right. And she accosted me in the audience. So yes, it was part of the character. But yeah, it's finding those connections that you have and also making sure that the experiences that people have at your theaters, regardless of color, regardless of status, that experience is something that is memorable, that will cause your company and people within your company to be referenceable, so that more people are apt to come to you and continue to come to you if you are referenceable. And if they see the outreach that you have and the fact that it's not difficult to get in. One of my pet peeves when I'm going on websites or trying to reach different theater companies just for something as simple as I would like to submit to direct or something, there's no email, or it goes to that dead email box that, oh, email us if you're interested, and you never hear anything. That is not accessible. It's probably one of the reasons why with Confidence Theatrics, the email comes to me and people are like, well, I can manage it. No, I got it. Because if somebody misses an email, I will lose my mind. But that's my own personal thing. So it's being able to allow people to, as weird as this sound, have access to you at the time that suits them. That doesn't mean 3 o'clock in the morning, but kind of get the idea where an email doesn't go into an unknown box, or a voicemail doesn't sit into that, that voicemail box that you have forgotten the code to go in and retrieve messages. I've actually recently worked with a company where they had not been in their phone message box for years. And there were people in there very upset because they were looking for refunds for tickets or whatever. But I was just like, yeah, you're going to have to fix that. I know it's a couple of years old, but you're going to have to fix the I guess you could call it the marketing and publicity nightmare that you have created by ignoring messages. Because those messages and whether it's email or voicemail or whether it's word of mouth, are impactful. And it can make you visible in a way that you don't want to be seen in. So that's one thing about being accessible and visible, or are you invisible? The other part of being accessible and being seen is, as a company, how do you see talent? Now that we're in this new awakening of diversity and equality and giving people equal footing for the shows that you are putting on, the question is, do you really see the talent? Do you see, and I'm just going to pick anyone that is in front of me on camera. If Amy comes in and auditions, and Danny comes in and auditions, and they're both auditioning for the same role, and we're going to say that they're auditioning for, let's just pick Romeo and Juliet. They're both going out for Juliet. They both could do Juliet. The question that I am putting out there for theaters to look at, when you see people come in and audition, do you see the talent or do you see the color? You have to take the color out of it, unless the color is necessary for the job, and we'll get to that secondly. But you have to start looking at the talent and putting that talent there. And it's kind of a contradiction of what I'm going to say, because sometimes you have to take a leap of faith on people that you don't know, or talent that you're not familiar with. And if you start stripping away the unconscious bias, sometimes it's like, okay, so you have Amy and Danny. And let's just say if I'm the casting director, I don't know either one of them. They both come with really good talent, but I identify with Danny more. Why am I identifying with Danny? Because we're the same race. Or so I think we are, but you know what I mean. But it's that familiarity. So it's taking that bias off, because that's kind of what it is, and really going for that talent that you're wanting at that particular moment. And the other part of, do you really see the talent versus seeing the color, is in this, I'm gonna find a way to openly say this. So I was having a conversation with regards to directing a show, and the question was asked, why did you pick the show? And point one, if anyone asks you, why did you pick the show, please have an answer. Make it up. It can be because I think it's a great show. Just make it up. But silence starts to make ears perk up. And then I'm starting to listen to what you're not saying. But the response was, well, we want a show for everyone. But this is an all-Black show. So what does that mean, a show for everyone? Well, we have a show for Latinx. We have a show for, our Indigenous, and then we have a show for African Americans. Those are called token shows. So you've pretty much put on a show for every marginalized race. And you're saying that you want a show for everyone. A show for everyone, and I will always go back to this because it's probably the easiest one. Cinderella is a show for everyone. Not everyone may like it, but there's nothing in there that says it can't be cast by any particular race. So when you are casting, it doesn't mean that you can't do a show that is specifically for a particular race, but just be aware of that messaging and just understand that if you're only going to do the one show for one particular race at a particular time of year or whatever, or in the month of June, this is when we're going to do all of our gay pride materials. Just make sure of the messaging. People pick up on those nuances that you may not pick up on. My favorite is always, oh, well, Ricky, let's do an August Wilson in February. Why? Well, it's Black History Month. I know. I'm Black every day. I wake up and never forget it. But it's those things that people tend to kind of misstate and mislabel. And if you were to reverse it, so let's just say, Doris, if you were going to college and you got into Howard University, you're just going to school and all of a sudden you're like, I'm going to go audition for this show. And they were like, okay, we're doing Dreamgirls. Doris, well, we'll do another show for you next month. So Dreamgirls is in February and we're going to call March White Month. And we're going to do Sound of Music for you in March. The way that your face even looked when I said, we're going to do a white show in March because we're going to call that White Month. That's how it sounds when you start putting shows in particular months. It doesn't mean you can't, but you can move stuff around to where, yes, you can have a show in February that speaks to the African Americans. You can have a show in June that speaks to LGBTQ community, but you can also do those shows in other months. So it's making sure that the talent that you see is representational of what your company kind of markers are about. Also, another thing to think about when you're trying to think of shows to even put on, think about what is, and I know Elizabeth is really good at this in what she does with Free Range Humans. Think about who's shaping these stories. What are these stories saying? How are they shaping conversations? How are they shaping social change? How are you taking something that has been done over and over again, one way, and make it completely different and new, but still speak to the intent of the piece? Silver Spring Stage just did A Doll's House, and I watched it and I was blown away by the acting, number one. But number two, I was just astounded by the multi-layers that they had diversely and within that casting. It just spoke to me in a way where I was like, oh, okay, all right. Because normally that might not have happened. Maybe not. But those are things that people are starting to look at, and those are things that make your company and your messaging visible to those that are outside. Because when I saw that, and I forgot there was something else I watched that weekend, I was like, these are people that are doing it. Who else did something? Well, of course, Julie did Into the Flood with Dominion Stage. And that was just amazingly done. But just look at when you're shaping stories, what that messaging is, how you want that to be conveyed. And as far as how you're shaping that story and that storytelling and how that's going to come out to the audience can also be used in your marketing to make it more visible. So people right now are very into theater that's going to be impactful. Of course, they're looking for stuff that's also entertaining, but they're looking for something that's going to be impactful, that is speaking to an issue of some sort. Might not be their issue, but that is less vapid than the normal theater that's been out there. And I know that sounds really odd. I'm losing my words today. So I'm saying strange things. But for people that are finding those messages and those points that they can kind of put out there. Artistic Synergy just did, yep, I said that right. Artistic Synergy just did one woman show that they broke up into a lot of different pieces that was just speaking about, you know, hidden medical illnesses. Great pieces that people were definitely acting out, but it was a different piece, part of their dialogue for change. There's so many different things that companies can do to make themselves accessible to everyone, having different pay scales, having free shows so that, you know, everyone can attend. I know I'm doing a lot of free radio shows with Greenbelt right now. They keep fussing at me because they're like, well, we have to charge for these. Then find someone else, because the minute you charge for any of these, I'm walking. This is for the purpose of giving people, I'm doing it from an access point. I'm trying to give people an opportunity to do something they might not have ever been able to do. And also give people an opportunity to do something that is still theater related, but doesn't require that they have to leave the house. Also doesn't require that I have to leave the house. So I really like that. So I'm doing it from the purpose of access. And what I love about the radio shows is that it crosses all boundaries, has nothing to do with age, has nothing to do with sex, has nothing to do with race. Yes, I like that, Roxanne. Physical accessibility too, relaxed performances, building access. Yes, all of those things are things that when it gets to access, I think as theater companies, we tend to forget about it, to where, because we're so interested, or not interested, but we're so focused on, I need a show that's going to bring in tons of money so that we can stay afloat. Still really good things, not knocking that at all. If we don't do that, then theater dies. So I get that, but I'm looking at supplementing things to where everyone has access. Yes, Ben. I saw you.
So on, yep,
Oh,
yep.
there you
So
go.
I had to unmute. Yeah, sorry. In terms of what y'all are talking about is like the physical and mental access, stuff like the ADA and the affordable. Sorry. Oh gosh, this Disabilities Act. I blanked on that for a second. I'm having a word stay today too. I've actually been doing a lot of research into this personally. As well. And one term that has been popping up a lot that I highly recommend for people to start looking at is the idea of universal design. And it's the concept of being able to, with any public facing service, that you're reaching as many people as possible, not the over idealistic that you can reach everybody, but you're reaching everybody as much as possible and looking at your everything from organizational structure like programming is stuff, as well as things like handrails and bathrooms. So it's like the whole scale. I just wanted to throw that word out there, as because that is their engineering as well as like business philosophy and all that stuff. They're starting to talk about that within that.
Oh yeah. We're going to be talking about this for eons. All the different things, but access is definitely one of those things that a lot of people have, that I hear a lot, especially when I'm doing the radio shows. People are like, I have never been able to do anything like this because either I'm consistently backstage or I'm always thought of as being backstage, or, you know, this is easy for me because I'm homebound. Or one of my coworkers who's blind, he was like, I'm now addicted to acting. He said, I've auditioned before for things, but no one wanted to take a chance on a blind actor, you know, because I can't really, he said, I can move, but I get, he understands the limitations that he has being blind. But with the radio shows, he's just kind of been soaring with that. And he's helping me with access to make sure that the materials that I put out or the website that I'm building is accessible for BVIs, for blind and visually impaired, as much as possible. And he'll tell me, he was like, okay, the coloring here is probably going to be off because it's not reading. I'm like, okay. Because you have to have high contrast, low contrast for people with extremely low vision. Things that I know working for National Industries for the Blind, but when I was building my site, I got tunnel vision because I was like, Ricky, putting this together. And then when I launched it to everyone else but me. So it's one of those things where when we're doing theater, we're so focused on what we want, we forget that when we release it, we're releasing it, you go this way to launch it, and then when you release it, you're releasing it this way. So how is that going to work out when you were so focused to get whatever that was out? So and it kind of, I explained it to one group that I was working with. I said, I get that you're trying to do diversity. Please don't pick, and they literally picked every show that I would probably suggest that you not do coming out right after this pandemic. I get what they were doing. They wanted butts and seats, they wanted kids, they wanted families, they wanted all different races. But I said, but if you do all those in one season, what you gonna do after that? So you have to kind of plan out your approaches to being accessible and visible, and how you can bring people in so that they can actually find a way to you. And as weird as this sounds, whenever things get back to normal, which will probably be like 5 years from now, like real normal, not new normal, real normal. That's the new thing. I just coined it. Leave me alone, Danny. So real normal, where you don't have to have a mask and people can actually, you can have a potluck at the theater. Just listen to my crazy, you'll get where I'm going. So you can have a potluck at the theater. And I'm saying that because people come for food before they come for anything else. Food will always bring people to you. You know, do a show. And I think I was working with one group and they said they wanted to do, I forgot the name of the show, but it was a Middle Eastern show and it had, you know, other people, and it was a very diverse show, and it had like 5 or 6 different races that were all convening to kind of discuss situations that were happening in their neighborhood in diversity. And the question was, well, maybe if we bring them all in, we could just, you know, have like little Mediterranean side dishes and, or, you know, Indian side dishes that they could try. And I was like, yeah, whenever we get back to that real normal, that's a way to kind of supplement. And again, people are always looking at different ways to be diverse. That's a really good way. And I think, Barbara, you and I spoke about that there was a summer camp or something that she attended that was up in Reisterstown, and everyone was working together. And then at the end of the day, different parents in the neighborhood would cook different meals, and all different nationalities, but everyone ate together. So it's a whole different thing of community theater, whether it's, even if it's professional theater, there's still community built around that, to start finding ways to incorporate, even though not food at this juncture, but finding other ways to incorporate the different types of people that you have within your group, to bring in other groups, to kind of have things be more open, new ways to be diverse. Yeah, I've been talking a lot. I'm gonna stop there. Who has something to say? I see it all over. Yes, Barbara.
Oh, go.
Something that I have been thinking about as we plan for a reopening of some sort. is as we hope to encourage, new people in the community to interact with the theater in a variety of different ways. Thinking about, and I can't think of a better word for this, so but onboarding, like folks who've never been in our building before, like don't know where the bathrooms are, like don't know where we keep tape or pencils, like writing implements, like just little things like that. So folks know where the resources are, like who to ask, how to lock up at the end of the day, where the light switches are if you get there and it's dark. So things like that to make it more welcoming for folks who are brand new. And how to disseminate that information is kind of something that I've been turning over. I don't necessarily have an answer, just throwing that out for consideration.
And those are good things because that's thinking outward, which is somewhat of a different mindset of how theaters kind of think. So you're looking at it from a theater perspective. How can I make, now you're going, how can I make other people feel comfort when they walk into this new space? How can I make them feel like they are at home? And that's, I also don't have an answer for that right off the bat, but really good thinking. It shows a switch versus we just want people to come in and see the shows to no, I now want you to, this is your community. This is a home for you. Elizabeth was next, and then Ben, I see you raised your hand. Okay, where's Elizabeth? There she is.
Hey, yeah, I wonder if there's a deeper messaging here that I'm struggling with because, with free range kids, my venue, I picked a mall because people walk by my storefront who would never consider walking in a theater in our county. I have probably equal conversations with white people and people of color of all sorts of colors. I mean, Frederick has a number of very diverse communities. I do a little raffle out front and collect people's email addresses, and I email them. And the first round of raffles, I literally told every single person that they won. Just told them all, you won a free class, come join my class. Not a single person of color took me up on it. And this next round here, it's again, it's like I'm doing the drawing so that yes, I can say I randomly drew, and then I'm adding like 6 other people that I know are new to the arts in Frederick because I've had all these conversations and nobody says yes to the free class. So I'm struggling with messaging, and honestly, the whole reason I haven't put up a teacher page yet. I have a performing artist page because you look down my performing artist page. It's got some color in it, yay! But my teaching roster, I have offered well over 50% of the offers have been people of color. I get we're in a pandemic that has hit people of color a lot harder. And I don't, blame anybody for saying, no, I'm not showing up in person. That's just where we are. And I totally get that. But I haven't had any classes run with a non-white teacher. So I haven't put up a teacher page yet because I don't want to until it's representative of what I'm trying to do. So I feel like I am missing a step here or missing some messaging.
Don't think you're missing a step because I admit I'm one of the ones that she asked and I said I'm not coming out the house.
I totally get that. I totally get it.
Yeah.
It is a pandemic.
Yeah, no, I don't think you're missing anything. I think it's the same thing. One, new, even though you're not that new. I think it's one, new. Two, as weird as it sounds, Frederick.
Yeah.
And that's not a big one. But two, it's Frederick.
Annie, I would love to hear more from you on your experience.
But I think it's a lot of, it's a lot of education that's going to have to be had. And it's primarily because people of color normally aren't, let me just speak for what I know. as a person of color, this Black person of color, because I can't speak for any other person of color, I got into theater by sheer shock. It was nothing that I planned to do. Theater, because of where I grew up, was the thing that the white people did, and I just paid to go see them. That was just the upbringing. I did ballet, I did all that other stuff. I was called a white girl because I did it. So it changed, it colored my whole mindset of, well, I'm just gonna stay in my lane over here and do my ballet and be inconspicuous. But when I got into theater, it opened up a whole new world for me. So now I'm paying it forward to try to get others to do that. But if they don't have that support, and especially if they're going to get called, oh, you're doing the white girl thing or the white boy thing, it's hard. So I'm not sure you could, yeah, we'll talk. But yeah, it's I don't think you're missing anything. I think it's just that learning curve. And Jeremy, I see you. I'm gonna go to Ben and then I'm gonna come to you because I know you're in response to Elizabeth. Yes. Ben.
Yeah, so this kind of, I was gonna piggyback off of prior to Elizabeth. Sorry, I forget your name. I can't see all the screens at the same time. But I think this does also apply to Elizabeth and what y'all were just talking about too. Of basically, what I think a lot of theater people fall into is we're wondering why people are not trusting, and I think that even goes beyond like racial divides. You could talk about like I can speak from experience, like the sexuality, like LGBTQ community is distrustful of the larger majority. Disability groups are distrustful of the abled community. All of this kind of stuff because of experiences we've had as minority groups in the majority, and ways to overcome that. I think it kind of hits a little bit of all of these, is just simply asking those communities what access obstacles are you coming across, or what can we do to build trust within those communities. Like you were saying earlier, if you're only doing a Black show in February, or a gay show in June, or an autistic show in April, that's not really what they're looking for. Most of those communities, they're not seeing it baked into from the beginning. They're seeing just that little, like you said, the token plays, I think is what the term you used, Noel. So it's not being baked in. And so it's to give a personal example, theater I worked with back in Charlotte and everything, we came across that issue. Okay, we want to do more plays that speak to these different communities. Well, then we had to do that hard work of looking at our theater. It's like, what have we done for those communities in a while? Have we done anything for them? And the hard answer was no, we haven't. So we had to start doing the work on our end first, and reaching out to those communities and building the trust ourselves first, in order. And part of that was asking, like, hey, what do you need? What do y'all need? So, yeah, that's all I got.
Okay. Jeremy.
I just wanted to piggyback on what Ben said real quick before I say something to what Elizabeth said, and just say that that's so true about building the relationship. You have to go to the actual community. I think that's the part that gets missed, because it leads into what Ricky was saying earlier about your playbill. You can't just have one or two things in the playbill. It's like, are you going to the community and having, hey, this is us. Here's what we're about. Here's what we're, interested in. But Elizabeth is actually doing that, where, she's having the raffle and stuff like that. And I'm just going to speak to my personal experience, which is that I have a relationship with Ricky over several years of working with her in theater. So I have a genuine trust that if I work on a project that she's involved with, that certain things are going to be handled a certain kind of way. And that has always been true. It's been a fruitful relationship. You know, I've selfishly benefited from that relationship, including now my children. So my children are in Pippin, and one of the reasons why we decided to do that was because of our connection with Ricky, because we didn't really know about the theater company until we had that connection with Ricky, and her being there and saying, oh, hey, I'm on the board, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. It really made it like, oh, you know what? This is a safe company. I know I can go there and trust that, you know, my kids are going to be good and it's going to be a good experience. And I think, Elizabeth, in building your brand, you know, like you said, when you can get those pictures in, because that's another thing. As a mother, I'm going to, you know, looking at a theater company, or I'm looking at a dance company, I'm going to look at that company and say, okay, well, how many African Americans are in that dance class? You know, and if I'm looking at a ballet class where I want to put my daughter, and I see that it's just all going to be a traditionally Caucasian dance school, then that's probably not a place where I'm going to put my daughter. You know, so the more that you can get with your, you know, in marketing and all that kind of stuff, and it's amazing that you have a relationship with Ricky. I think that's the way to go, is having a relationship with minorities, not for like procurement necessarily, but for building actual, you know, truthful relationships that build a community. And I know that's not what you did. You weren't like, hey, Ricky, come over, we need more Black people. I know you did it with a genuine heart, saying, hey, I want to build a real community. And I think that's what you're doing by inviting other people to come on and work with you. So it's not just you by yourself, because you look at the great, I don't know how many of you know Vera Katz, who is a very tiny Jewish woman who taught acting at Howard University. And she is beloved by everyone because, you know, she went into the village, she sat down, she built all the relationships, you know, and I think that's really how you foster what you want, because you're right, you know, people aren't going to trust until they really see they can trust. So kind of a long-winded answer, but, you know, we've been really happy to have our children participate, and it's been a great experience. And anytime you need us to, you know, help you give a reference for that or whatever. I know it's a little different when you're dealing with diversity and how it looks like in my family, but any way we can help, you know, we will do that. So.
Yeah, it's a lot of it is relationship building, and I would say for any company, and especially Elizabeth, for anyone that is out there doing it, it is not going to be easy, and you all know that. But just keep pushing. You are reaching people, because I hear about it, Elizabeth. You don't know that I hear there. I have distant family. I guess if she marries him, he's family. So I have distant family in Frederick. But he talks about it because they came to see 35 millimeter. And I was like, so when are you going to do something else? I was like, I'm busy. And they were like, yeah, but I said, but they have a new thing. Well, if we move there, I'll put my daughter in it. I was like, okay, well, are you going to move or not? So it is being talked about in a barbershop in Frederick. So that much I do know. And I think it goes to a comfort level of, it's almost like you have to keep hearing about it and hearing about it and hearing about it. Like, I heard about Schitt's Creek for years, and I finally watched it. Shocker. I mean, there are things that people hear about over and over again. It's okay to be, we've all seen that person like, oh, I just saw Raiders of the Lost Ark and it's 2021. Welcome. I mean, it happens. You could be the Raiders of the Lost Ark of theater in Frederick, where everyone shows up, you know, a year later than you wanted them to.
And also people in traditionally, like if you talk to Marylanders, some of us Marylanders, Virginia isn't a happy place. So, you know,
No, she's in.
well, no, you're in Frederick, but I just mean like if you talk over time, you think,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, it's like some people are equating it with Virginia maybe, or, you know, stuff like that, or how far it is, or, you know, all sorts of things. And I think with a lot of African American communities, sometimes there's some way out. And some of us other African Americans don't realize that there are actually African Americans there. You know, it's like Danny's waving. Exactly. Like you think, okay, well, I'm not sure I want to go out there where I'm going to be the only one, or I'm going to be lonely, or, you know, that's very big as well. So,
And what Jeremy just said is something that regardless of whether it's race or age or whatever, I don't want to be the only one is what rings in a lot of people's minds overall. Yes, Doris.
Um, I think this goes along with what you're talking about, and I want to thank you profusely for last month's discussion because it motivated me to do something a little bit differently. I was on very, very short notice, I undertook the director selection for a play that we're going to do. I'm not going to go so far as to say we are open. We are seating 30 people in a 180 seat arena. And so it is very sparse. And because we are an arena, we have the distancing needs. We cannot use our stage as an in the round stage because our audience is too close. If we did that, we would have basically a rug runner down the middle where the actors were able to perform.
Okay.
So we have kind of a problem from that, but also an opportunity. We have torn out one section of seats, completely taken them out, and built a rake and a series of ramps underneath that can be used. And that's what we're doing. So for right now, we do not have the physical access that we've always been able to say, yes, if you're in a wheelchair, come to auditions, because we have complete access in our entire building. No performer could work on what we're dealing with right now. But I just remind myself, this is temporary. I mean, someday we'll be back in the round and we'll be able to do that. But last month, I really took to heart your comments about what do you perceive when you walk in the door as an auditioner? And we are, I'm sorry, I'm with Colonial Players, and we know a lot of what the reputation is, and some of us are working very, very hard to change that perception in the community. But you said something about looking at people, and I recalled that a number of years ago, we had a young woman at the time, this was a while ago, a Black woman who was going to be doing directing a show. And through a weird series of events, the rights got pulled. And under very short notice, we had to come up with a completely different show. And she handled that with such grace and with such success. But she has gone and is active and is on the board in other places. And she has a family, and there's, all this other stuff going on now. And I called her out of the blue and sort of reintroduced myself to her. I didn't know if she even knew who I was. And I said, I would really wonder if you would be interested in being on this director selection panel. And she said, oh, yes, absolutely. I was taken aback with the speed at which she agreed to do it. And she came in, through the course of the week, everything went beautifully. At the end, I said, well, I think we should do this again. And she said, anytime. And I was thrilled that, first of all, that you gave me the courage when you were saying, one step at a time, you can't be what you want to be tomorrow. You can just take one step. And it was such a good reminder to me of how, first of all, don't we all like to be asked?
Yes.
And it doesn't hurt to ask, because the worst that happens is that you don't get any better than what you've already got.
Yeah.
You know, the worst that could happen was she'd say no. And it was just fortunate that she was able to do it, not only willing, but able. And so I just feel like that has opened up another pathway and evolved another person. And I think that that kind of even sharing with other theaters and being in contact with them, you know, like, who have you got over there?
Yeah.
Might be
The ask
interested in
is,
helping.
the ask will go a long way for a lot. And I'm glad that worked out. And
Yeah.
sorry to cut you off. Mark had his hand up, and then I want to be respectful of everyone's time since we're at the end. But yes, Mark.
Yeah, we've kind of touched on it in this meeting, but something I've always been very passionate about is the fact that a lot of theaters are backwards in their thinking, where they think, I'm afraid to build it because I'm afraid they won't come. And I'm like, no, there's a reason the phrase goes, if you build it, they will come. A good example I've thought of in terms of accessibility is continuing post-COVID. I know we're all excited to get back into the theater, but streaming performances are so accessible for so many people. We really need to be advocating for more streaming performances, more other ways of accessibility. You know, it's not enough. We've kind of touched on to say, you know, oh, we're doing a Black show in February, we're doing a gay show in June, or we have this one show that's sign language interpreted. You need to start building these things organically into more theater performances, so that when different communities see, hey, they're consistently doing stuff like this, they will trust your theater more and they will be more willing to come.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's one of the reasons why I told Greenbelt, I was like, I have 350 of these radio shows in my arsenal that I can use. So as long as you will let me do them, I will continue to do them. And it's accessible. It's something that people can do. We can do a live stream, we can record it and post it, but it's all accessible. And that is one of the things that I agree with you, we really need to hone in on, because if we don't make ourselves as individuals and our companies as businesses accessible to all, you're fighting. You're always going to be fighting against someone. And with that, Julie had something to say.
Yeah, I just want to, because please continue to use forums like this, and then the Facebook page and, you know, Confidence Theatrics page, to share this information, because I only moved here a couple of years ago, and I'm like baffled by how little the companies in this area talk to each other. Like, it really confuses me. Because, like, if nothing else, why isn't everyone deconflicting their seasons so that we're not seeing the same freaking shows like 8,000 times in one season? It's just me. But like,
No, you're not alone. That's a thing.
It's a thing. So, and I know some company presidents have tried and it just like fell flat. So if you're on boards or you're president, try to talk to each other, but like use these forums that we're trying to build, not just as forums to advertise what your company is doing, but to create crosstalk. Because I just think that's how we get stronger. If we actually talk to each other. It's weird, I know, like we're doing here. So thanks.
All right, CJ, real quick, chair me, and then I will close it out.
I just wanted to say to Doris that I worked at Colonial Players as an assistant director to Craig Mummy.
Craig Mummy?
Yeah, back when they did Jekyll and Hyde.
Oh, yeah.
The musical. And sadly, I never went back really. And I think it's partly because of the reputation you're talking about.
Mhm.
And so I am super excited to hear that you guys are changing and opening up, and because I don't think you haven't done anything over the years. I've been kind of paying attention, but I think that the direction that you're going in, and the fact that you got somebody, to come in and be in, help you with director selection, that's like super exciting. It's super exciting to hear. So I just wanted to give you a high five on that.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hope to see you again sometime.
Oh yeah, I'd love to come out.
So with does anyone else have anything else they'd like to say? There will be this recording will be posted on the website. If you need to listen to it again or send it to someone that needs to hear it. So it'll be on the website. There will be a handout. It will be 2 weeks late because I am going on vacation because I need one. And my agreement is not to do any work on vacation for the first time ever in life. So we'll
Good
see.
luck.
We'll see if that happens. I don't think it will. But yeah, I thank you all for your candor, for listening, and for keeping diversity just kind of on the forefront. I truly believe if you kind of, particularly what Julie said, if we don't talk to each other, we can't change. You can talk to yourself. I've been talking to myself for a year about losing weight. It hasn't happened because my body is not having a conversation with me. It's fighting me. But if people talk to each other about these things, and it's why I keep having these chats, as much as I talk to you, you actually help me grow, because in all this stream of consciousness talking, sometimes planned talking that I do, I'm learning about things that I need to do, not only for me, but if I am going to be directing another show somewhere, like how do I do that? And yeah, so thank you for letting this space be accessible to all of you. So with that,
Pep talk, and thank you all for the pep talk. I needed one. Thank you.
oh, you got this, Elizabeth. We'll chat. We'll continue to chat. It's not that we never have. All right. Thank you, guys.